So public speaking for me is something that I really enjoy, which I think is rare and odd. I don't think everyone loves or enjoys public speaking, but my experience was really born out of a cancer diagnosis. I was diagnosed with cancer when I was just 20 years old, and I started speaking out about my experience, and I had so many opportunities to share my story that it really helped mold me into the public speaker that I am today.
Well, at the age of 20, I'm 24 now, I was diagnosed with stage 2 melanoma on my abdomen. It was an area that was not exposed to the sun on a daily basis, and I was only visiting the tanning beds once a week for 20 minutes a week. And look what happened to me. It really scares me that you guys are going multiple times, even twice a day.
I think in order for someone to be a good public speaker, there really has to be authenticity. And you can see when someone gets up on stage whether or not they're comfortable, whether or not they know the topic that they're talking about. And so I think public speaking is a very rare skill that really you have to practice, and you have to know your craft and you have to know what you're talking about.
Tonight is about connecting you. So after this fashion show, you're going to shop and then you're going to connect with one another, because this is what it's about. It's about supporting other women in business.
Never in a million years thought I was going to be getting a cancer diagnosis at the age of 20. So yes, I went in, I had the mole removed, and I drove directly to the nearest tanning salon. And I remember that because I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to have a tan line from the steri strips from this little surgery. So my mentality was anything but logical. It was the typical, I'm indestructible teenage girl mentality.
For years, I've really enjoyed talking about my experience with cancer, but now I really enjoy talking about marketing, public relations, social media.
Key with PR is that you have to do something that sets you apart. It doesn't have to be something boring and mundane. So a lot of people, when they think of PR, they think of drafting a press release and just sending it out to the media. And that doesn't have to be all that you do. You can find some creative ways to incorporate, whether it's props or maybe you dress up and hand deliver your press release to the local media outlets.
As a professor of social media, it's something that I enjoy talking and educating young people. And this is no different. Public speaking is all about educating and connecting with people, and that can be hard to do when you're on a stage. But I think it's such an important skill set that every business professional needs to know. So when we're talking about PR, just to reiterate, it's not guaranteed. So we're writing up a press release, we're crafting a really creative pitch, we're sending it out to the news, but ultimately they get to decide whether or not they're going to run that story. So for me, public speaking has never really been too much of a challenge. It was when I first started, but with practice and repetition and doing it over and over again, you become more comfortable on stage. And I think for me, the most rewarding part of public speaking is not during the speech itself, but afterwards, when people come up to you and you have that ability to connect with them and make a relationship depending on what you were talking about. And so I think it's important when you're on stage to find a way to connect with your audience. So I am here today to talk a little bit, I'll give you a little bit of background about myself besides Chick Media. I've been in marketing and PR for the last 8 years. I got my start as the advertising and promotions manager for Six Flags New England, where I spent 3.5 years there managing all their advertising and media. I left corporate America to go try nonprofit for a little while and went to the Food Bank of Western Mass as the development and marketing manager, where I was responsible for a lot of fundraising and running of events. And then I got recruited to Wilbraham & Munson Academy as the director of marketing and communications, and I did that for about 2.5 years. So in a small frame of time, I've lived about 1 million lives. But aside from all that, I wanted to talk to you today about finding your voice through personal crisis. And when I started kind of putting notes on paper about what I was going to talk about, I was like, I've had so many personal crises, which one am I going to talk about? Right, we've all been there. Yes, but in all seriousness, I am a soon-to-be 10-year cancer survivor. Next month will mark 10 years free from a cancer therapy. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my personal story and how it really shaped me into becoming the person that I am today. So when I was 20 years old, I was in my sophomore year of college. Life was completely on track. I had finally decided I wanted to be a communications major because I was really horrible at math and could not go into marine biology like I wanted to. Learn that right away. So decided to go for communications journalism. Had a really great boyfriend, had a great group of friends, was just loving this carefree existence that you have when you're in college. I was going to school at Roger Williams, which is in Rhode Island, beautiful part of the state. And I spotted this suspicious looking mole on my abdomen, and it had really started to itch, it had started to bother me. I noticed it was getting really dark, and I was a big sun worshiper, tanning bed user. Never wore sunscreen, loved the tanning beds, kind of just fried my skin on a regular basis in order to get a tan. So I went home for my doctor's appointment, just a regular checkup that you get, anytime. Every year we go for our regular doctor's appointments, and I spotted out, I pointed out this spot on my stomach. And I'll spare you all the details, but my doctor was really casual about it. I really had to fight to get this mole removed because she thought it looked fine. She didn't think it had irregular borders. She didn't think it had any indicators of a melanoma. Well, I demanded to have the mole taken off for some reason. Just something inside me kept saying, this is wrong, this is wrong. So went in 2 weeks later to have the stitches taken out, and I would be given a melanoma diagnosis at the age of 20 during my sophomore year of college. So how many people can relate to when you have everything planned, your life is going finally, like it's been 5 years since your life is finally on track, and all of a sudden just bam, something comes out of the blue and completely derails your plans. And that's really what it felt like to me. It was like, why me? Why am I dealing with cancer in college? This isn't fair. And there was a lot of kind of self-blame and self-pity that happened. So when I was writing my notes for this, I was looking up the stages of grief, and I think that these can apply to so many different situations. I passed them out in the paperwork. This doesn't necessarily have to be, your personal crisis doesn't have to be a cancer diagnosis. It can be the loss of a loved one. It can be a divorce. It can be losing a job. It can be getting some sort of diagnosis. But we know that the 5 stages of grief start first and foremost with denial and isolation. And that's really where I went, for the first few months after my cancer diagnosis. I was isolated. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I really kind of resented my friends because I didn't feel they were being supportive enough. And then I went right on to the next stage, which was anger. And this is always my favorite stage because this is where I harbor, I stay. I really hang on to anger for a really long time. I was just pissed off. I was pissed off that I got cancer. I was angry at my friends because they were still going to the beach and having fun, and I had to stay inside and wear sunscreen, and just so angry that I had, done this. I had given myself cancer. Then there's bargaining, right? So there's this, well, if I had just done something differently, if I hadn't used those tanning booths, or maybe if you've just lost a job, if I didn't yell at my boss, if I had stayed late. You go into this dark place where you're kind of questioning all of the things that you've done that led to this personal crisis. Like, if I had done something different, would the outcome have been different? Depression. That was the one that I think hit me the hardest. After I had gone through all those other stages, and these stages, they're different for everybody. Maybe they're not in this order, maybe they're not as long, some are longer than others. They're different for everybody. But depression was definitely the stage where I stayed a long time, and it really hit me hard. And so I was kind of going about my business. I had been given a clean bill of health. The cancer had not spread past being on my skin. So melanoma can go to a stage 3 where it goes into the lymph nodes, then it goes to a stage 4 where it attacks an organ. I had luckily stayed at stage 2. So I was going about my business. I was going to school for communications, and I was writing as a freelancer for the Newport Mercury. And I remember, they were talking about how they wanted to do this summer extravaganza. They wanted to talk about where to get the best spray tan and where to go lay out on the beach. And I kind of raised my hand and said, oh, well, just as an FYI, I had melanoma that was really caused by seeking a lot of UV radiation. Maybe I could do something on that. And they were like, oh, okay, not only are you going to write a first-person story, but you're going to totally pose on the cover. We're going to show your scar. We're going to throw you out there. We're just going to, this is going to be great. And I was like, freaking out because I'm like, show my scar? Are you kidding me? That's hideous. I don't even wear a 2-piece anymore. I wear it in a parka, basically. So, they convinced me otherwise. And it was about 1.5 years after my diagnosis, and I was like, sitting there, and I remember going home, and I like called my mom, because you always call your mom, right? And I called my mom, and she's like, yeah, you should do it. Why not? You know, like, do it, put yourself out there, let's see what happens. So I go back to kind of how you can use the personal crises to catapult you into something. So the last and final stage of stages of grief is acceptance. And it was the moment that I agreed to do that article, and I sat down to write it and to write this first person story, that I really accepted the cancer diagnosis. And that was a really kind of freeing thing, because I let go of the blame that I had put on myself for giving myself the cancer. I let go of the anger, I let go of the sadness, and I sort of realized maybe this happened for a reason. I've been given a clean bill of health. Maybe what I'm supposed to do with it is I'm supposed to go out there and tell people what happened to me, so that I can lead by example and other people don't have to experience what I experienced. So acceptance for me was, you know, it got to the point where it became easy because I was given that opportunity to share my story. But what are some things that you would think would make acceptance difficult? Just throw it out there. What would be hard about accepting a cancer diagnosis or the loss of a job?
Fear of the future.
Fear of the
Is it
future.
gonna come back?
Exactly. Maybe it's resentment. Maybe someone was an outside influence that led you to that personal crisis, that you just have this resentment that you can't let go of, an inability to just let go. And I was lucky enough to be given this opportunity to share my story. So I go ahead and kind of acknowledge the fact that there was a lesson in what had happened to me, and there was a reason for it. And so I wrote the story and talk about, like, one of the things that I wanted to point out about being able to find your voice and share your story and use personal crises to build you into who you become is, I think there's a big part of letting go of embarrassment.
Yeah.
You know, I think that it was really embarrassing for me to tell people that I had kind of given myself cancer. I can imagine that, you know, it's embarrassing to tell people that you've lost a job because you just feel embarrassed by it. You feel mortified. I mean, you don't go around saying, we got a divorce because I was a control freak. You know? That's not what people do. It's embarrassing, but you have to let go of that. Because in order to allow for self-growth and self-improvement, you have to embrace what happened to you. So, talk about letting go of embarrassment. I brought this. This was the first article I'd ever written. Here is me, nasty scar on the cover of the magazine. I'll pass this around. This went to print. I almost shit my pants when it came out because I didn't realize they were gonna there it is. There it is. There's your purple nasty scar. The minute that went to print, I think it was within a day, I received, I can't even tell you how many emails. This was before the life of social media where people could Facebook me or whatever. So many emails from women who were, you saved my daughter's life. You shared this story. My daughter's completely addicted to tanning. I showed her, she's not going anymore. Or I had no idea that melanoma could cause such major medical issues. I'm gonna wear sunscreen now. I had one, woman email me and just say, I cried. I cried the entire time I read this article. So it became this, just eye-opening experience. Taking this awful bad situation and turning it into something good. How am I doing on time? Am I over?
Like 10 seconds?
10 seconds? Okay. So, from that experience, from sharing my story and having all these people reach out to me, I ended up getting a call from the Skin Cancer Foundation, which is a national organization. They asked me to be a spokesperson for them, which then sent me down to New York City. I got to pose in Times Square for Marie Clare Magazine, which then launched me into becoming a national spokesperson for the American Academy of Dermatology. I've been on Inside Edition and World News with Charles Gibson. I've been speaking on the topic for 9 years, and like I said, it'll be 10 years next month. And so the point here, I think, is just if you're going through something so emotional, whether it is a diagnosis of a disease or a family member loss or something in your life that's just got you so down, it's going to shape who you are. You're never going to get rid of it. You need to accept it. You need to get over the embarrassment. It's going to become a part of who you are. And the sooner we can embrace that and let it mold us and take charge of it, the better. So I always say that if you can live through the dark, or if you can make it through the dark, then you can live in the light.